Speaker, and I commend you for your Red Cross badge.
Oh, thank you.
Deputy Speaker, I rise to speak on indulgence in response to the Prime Minister's statement on the recent floods in south-east Queensland and northern New South Wales. The catastrophic floods that enveloped south-east Queensland and northern New South Wales in February and March have been described as one of Australia's worst ever natural disasters. In Queensland alone, 13 lives were lost, and I send my sincere condolences to the families and friends of those who lost their lives. 12 suburbs in my electorate of Moreton were inundated in late February. About 2,200 homes had water over their floorboards. Numerous businesses have been destroyed or had havoc wreaked upon them. Families have lost precious possessions collected over a lifetime, and the trauma will linger for ages, coming back every time it rains hard, as it has again this week. When lows return, many will feel low again. My community has been through this before, Deputy Speaker. There was the famous 1974 deluge, and then the 2011 floods in my time as an MP hit my community very hard. Sadly, some families that were flooded way back in 2011 are again facing heartbreaking clean-up and rebuilding. I know my community is resilient. I know they'll pull through this and rebuild their homes and rebuild their lives, but it's tough, it's challenging, it's draining. In fact, much slower than the floodwaters are draining away in some occasions. I'd like to thank the wonderful community groups in Moreton who immediately swung into action, who learnt from 2011. They set up pop-up evacuation centres for families, places where they could also take their pets, which can be a challenge. They provided shelter, they provided electricity to charge phones, crucial in this digital age. They provided meals, they provided comfort, they provided a helping hand. And I'll mention some of those groups who stepped up. The Yeronga Community Centre, incredible work. Wellers Hills Bowls Club, before they were shut down by the Brisbane City Council, sadly. The Corinda Bowls Club, the Clubhouse at Maruka, Dewar's Refrigeration at Rocklea, just a business who allowed the use of their business facility, their business site, to operate as a relief hub at Rocklea. The Graceful Presbyterian Church, the Tzu Chi Buddhist Compassion Relief Foundation, who I particularly call out because they literally handed over cheques. Well, they handed over money to people, as well as other forms of support. Maruka Lions, Archerfield Rotary Club, the Lions Club of Eckerman, parents and students from St Lawrence's who pitched in, Yeronga Park Swimming Centre, Dunlop Park Memorial Swimming Pool, the Oxley Senior Citizens, Lou Bromley from Oxley, Jackie Hollyoak from Salisbury, Life Church, Synergy Education, Bangladesh Puja Cultural Society Incorporated of Brisbane, Orange Sky, Sundays Cafe, thank you Anthony, St Thomas More Facebook group, Rocklea Facebook group, Lynn Rowe, Desley Griffiths from Sandalwood, and so many other unnamed people who donated goods and food and money and turned up to help. I especially acknowledge the elected representatives, Brisbane City Councillor Nicole Johnston and Steve Griffiths, and state MPs Mark Bailey, Jess Pugh and Peter Russo. Deputy Speaker, dealing with any crisis is tough. Dealing with a flood is really challenging. It's dirty, it's smelly, it's heartbreaking. In 2011, when Prime Minister Julia Gillard ensured that there were Centrelink workers on the ground almost immediately, like the next day, to help people apply for their disaster payments, it was crucial to get turning people's lives around. I remember those Commonwealth workers wearing their teal shirts, this was before independents ran in elections, I guess, and wearing their teal shirts and helping locals to access payments right there, right then. Disappointingly, in 2022, that wasn't the case. It took 5 days to get anyone from a government department, a Morrison government department, into Moreton. The Morrison government actually expected people from flooded in Chelmer and Graceville somehow to row and drive to Chandler, 25 kilometres away. I point out that there were 3 Centrelink sites in Longman, and taking nothing from the people of Longman, but none in Moreton, Griffith, Oxley, Rankin. All of those 4 seats, all represented by Labor people. It was only after much lobbying from me that finally Services Australia workers were sent into some of the community centres in Moreton to help on the face-to-face basis, because guess what? Internet towers were down, phones weren't charged. I do thank those Services Australia workers, many that I've met, who've been so helpful to my community. In 2011, I vividly remember the ADF arriving to help again, almost immediately, the night of the floods, in fact. I remember reservists, all sorts, were out there the night of the flood. In 2022, it took many days before any ADF arrived in Moreton. And in fact, on my journeys throughout Moreton, there was a stark contrast between the Commonwealth Government support for locals back in 2011 and 2022. And that's disappointing. It's a symptom of a bigger problem with this coalition government. They're not there when we need them. They're there for the photo op with a broom, but when it comes to giving genuine support, they're missing in action. Many locals have been disappointed to be not given the same financial support they thought would be forthcoming. The Minister makes the rules about who is eligible for the disaster recovery payment. In 2022, the eligibility rules were much tougher than 2011. Lauren from Rocklea had no power for 6 days, so that means all your food's gone. Her back fence was damaged as it was used to evacuate other residents. Her house has mould from the water, tools in a shed were destroyed, but Lauren's application for disaster recovery payment has been rejected twice. David, again from Rocklea, has 4 children, a single income family, 3 metres of water through his property. He's living in the flooded property upstairs. David said he had tried to tell his neighbours it was serious, but there were no official warnings. Yuri and his mother also live at Rocklea. Yuri says the message to move out was too late. I know, because I live in Moreton next to Rocklea, and we got it late on the Sunday night. Yuri's mother is staying at the property in a tent and is worried about more rain. Lacey from Oxley will not be able to move back to her house for 6 to 12 months. The water reached the roof line. She's living with other family members. Felicity and Keith are long-term residents of Chelmer. They were previously flooded in 2011. They want to raise their homes so that they don't get flooded again. The residents of Inskip Street, Rocklea, watched the waters rising up on Saturday night. They looked on the internet and TV for warnings, but there were none. So they went to bed. Luckily, one neighbour had to go to work early and set his alarm for 4 a.m. When the alarm went off, he stepped out of his bed into a river of water. In 2022, no warning. Out on the street, the water was rising fast. Cars were submerged. Residents tried to save what they could. What the residents of Inskip Street can't understand is why there wasn't any warning until late on the Sunday night. The Queensland Government last year requested the Commonwealth to fund an upgrade to the flood warning infrastructure network as a priority, a request that was refused. The government's $4 billion Disaster Recovery and Mitigation Fund is sitting untouched, earning interest, but not doing anything for disaster recovery or mitigation. Not 1 cent has been spent from the fund. Australians are going through really tough times. We've had the pandemic, we've had fires, we've had floods. They have faced disaster after disaster, and they deserve a government that will support them. A government that will make sure that we are prepared for the next flood, because it is coming. And the one after that, and the one after that, because we know that we're going to face more frequent and more severe disasters because of climate change. There, I said it. That word, climate change. It's not a difficult word to face, it's a reality. Deputy Speaker, it's not the sticky dark mud, the stinking water, or the smashed up sodden piles of belongings of people's lives stacked on footpaths that stays with me in the aftermath of my community again facing flood situations. Those phenomena are memorable. But what stays closest to my heart is how our community always comes together to help out others. That is what I hold dear. The people of Moreton were magnificent in all 12 suburbs that were inundated. It's what inspires me to keep fighting for them.
I thank the member for his statement.